back to one of our top stories now. China's Foreign Minister has issued Australia with a 4-point list of actions to get the relationship back on track. Joining us live now is the Assistant Foreign Affairs Minister, Tim Watts. Tim, good to see you. Thanks for your time this morning. So we'll start off with that point that was raised by Wang Yi. He says the former government was the root cause of the fractured relationship. Do you agree with Wang Yi?
Well, look, the first thing we should say, Peter, is that the meeting between Foreign Minister Penny Wong and her counterpart was an important meeting, and it was a constructive one. There was a frank exchange of views, and there was listening on both sides about those key issues in the relationship: bilateral, regional, consular and trade. What Foreign Minister Wong made clear to Mr Wang Yi is that while the Australian government has changed, Australia's policy settings and our national interests haven't. So it was a very clear message to Mr Wang Yi. There will be calm and will be consistent in our representations, but it is in the interests of both sides of this relationship to stabilise the relationship going forward.
Yeah, and I think everyone agrees that it was an important first step as we head down that road, and it's a Herculean task that you've got. But back to that original point, do you believe Wang Yi was right in saying that the former government is the root cause for all of the problems?
Well, Peter, while the Australian government changed, our policy settings haven't changed, and we will continue to speak out.
So he's wrong.
National interest calls for it, we'll continue to speak out where the national interest calls for it, Peter. Where the national interest and Australian sovereignty demands it, we'll be clear. And we have been clear on issues like those trade issues. We've been clear saying that the increased tariffs on Australian goods need to be removed. We've been clear on the consular issues, the case of Ms Chung Lee and Dr Yang. Those were all issues that were discussed in the bilateral meeting between Foreign Minister Wong and Foreign Minister Wang Yi.
OK, so they've sent 4 points. Are they some of the points that you will send in return?
Well, we've been very clear about the issues in the relationship from the Australian perspective. We do not believe that these trade sanctions, these increased tariffs are justified in any way, and that's why we've initiated WTO proceedings in relation to them. We've been calling very clearly for basic standards of procedural fairness, of transparency and justice in the cases of Ms Chung Lee and Dr Yang. I should say with Ms Chung Lee, she hasn't had access to her family for 18 months now. She has 2 young children in Australia, and I think any parent in Australia or China could understand how painful that is. That's something that we've made representations on bilaterally and publicly.
So how were those points received by China when they were put to them?
Well, as I say, it was a frank conversation where both sides of the meeting made their interests and priorities clear. And there was listening on both sides of the relationship. We should understand that stabilising this relationship won't be a quick process. This was one step, but Australia will remain calm and consistent in our representations.
But did they seem open to allowing those Australians to go, to at least release them from attention on that point?
Well, Peter, as I say, it was a frank conversation and there was listening on both sides. We've been calm and consistent in our representation on these consular issues, and we will continue to be so.
Sure, but was there anything promising that came out of that?
Well, Peter, I wasn't in the meeting myself. Yeah. You can understand.
No, sure, but has Penny Wong suggested
it's been reported to me that there was a frank conversation and that there was careful listening on both sides of the conversation.
OK, but what does that really mean? I mean, would they be open down the track to releasing them? Did Penny Wong advise you that there's some positivity coming there on that front?
Well, Peter, the clear message is that this is going to take some time. Stabilising this relationship and addressing issues of mutual concern in the relationship will take calm and consistent diplomacy and representations over time. No one's saying that there's going to be a quick fix here, that no one is saying that there is going to be a rapid change. As we've said, while the Australian government has changed, our national interest hasn't, and now there is Australia's policy settings.
So those 4 points, those 4 points that were issued by Wang Yi, would Australia agree to any of them or all of them?
But Peter, we'll never compromise on Australia's national interest and on our sovereignty. We will be calm and consistent in making the case on issues of national concern for Australia. And I've set out some of those issues before. We're not going to change our approach on these issues, frankly.
Okay, just on this news overnight that the Solomon Islands won't allow some Australian aid workers into Solomon Islands. Sogavari has made that call, but he's allowed some Chinese security personnel in. What's the information that you're getting on that and your concerns about that?
Look, at the big picture, it's important to say, Peter, that Australia remains committed to being the largest development partner of the Solomon Islands across all aspects of that country, across their society and their economy. Throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, we have continued to see access for Australian advisors, trainers, officials provided by the Solomon Islands government over the preceding years, and that continues to be the case now. From the reporting in the papers today, we can see that there are 5 Australian officials who have had their approval processes delayed somewhat. They're not blocked. It's just that these are cases that are somewhat more administratively complex. They operate across multiple ministries. Some of them have moved from other development partners into the Solomon Islands. And from time to time, getting approval for these more complex cases can take some time, and that's what we're seeing here.
But doesn't it fit a broader picture? I mean, there was even developments over the weekend where Manisa Sogavari has... he now wants to fund and have complete control of the national broadcaster. That's just another example. I mean, and now that this process has been delayed with Australian aid workers, I mean, don't you feel like there is a theme, and more of a theme, that is being established here? One that it wants to attach itself further to China, and that would in turn affect the stability of the region when it comes to security, wouldn't it?
Look, in the instance of these specific visas, Peter, it's really clear from our perspective that this is just an administrative issue. This is not symbolic of something more significant or more malevolent in some way. This is just, sometimes more complex applications take more time, and that's happened from time to time, and we remain committed to being a development partner. On the broader security issues, we've been really clear that the security of the Pacific is a matter for the whole the whole Pacific family, of which Australia and New Zealand are members. And we encourage all Pacific Island leaders to engage with these issues transparently and collaboratively as part of the Pacific family, because that unity is really important at the moment. It's more important than it's ever been before. Okay,
just a final one here, Tim, because it was a question was asked by Dan Tehan on the program last hour. He makes the point that we have supplied vaccines to Indonesia, but the question's been asked, what's being done to keep Australia safe and free from foot and mouth disease? As you know, potentially could cause big problems if it leaks into Australia.
Oh, absolutely, Peter. I should say, I grew up in regional Australia. My father was an agricultural engineer, and I spent a lot of time on feedlots dealing with Australian livestock. I absolutely know how concerned Australian industry is about this, and that's why Murray Watt's been on the front foot on this from the very start as our agricultural minister. He's been speaking with both the industry and our Indonesian counterparts, and there is a raft of measures that are being taken to prevent the arrival of foot and mouth disease in Australia. We understand how catastrophic that would be. You've seen biosecurity surveillance dogs rolled out at airports, significant advertising campaigns on social media, billboards in the airports, flyers, increased training, biosecurity training for airline staff and airport staff. We want all Australians to be really clear about the role that they will play in ensuring that this very significant disease doesn't get to Australia. And I'm confident that Murray is doing all that needs to be done from the Australian government's perspective.
Tim Watts, appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for joining us. Talk to you again soon.